For 6 years, a homeless man lived behind a gas station in a small Texas town, sleeping in an old tent, fixing broken-down cars for free for anyone who asked. People gave him spare change. Some gave him leftover food. Nobody gave him a second thought. Then, one morning, 3 lawyers in suits pulled up to that gas station looking for him because they had a check with his name on it. $11 million. This is the story of a man named Harold, and why he chose to live like he had nothing when he had almost everything. Harold Whitfield joined the Army at 19. He served 2 tours as a mechanic, keeping trucks and Humvees running in conditions most people can't imagine. His unit called him Wrench, because if something had an engine, Harold could fix it, no matter how broken it looked. When he came home, he had 2 things: a set of tools he'd carried through 2 deployments, and a silence that never really went away. He didn't talk about what he'd seen. He didn't talk about the friends who didn't make it back. He just worked. For a while, Harold had a normal life. A small apartment, a job at a local auto shop, a routine. But something in him had shifted overseas, something that never fully settled back into place. He started missing shifts. He stopped answering calls. Eventually, he stopped showing up altogether. By the time he was 40, Harold was living out of his car. By 42, he didn't even have that. Most people who passed the gas station on Route 9 didn't know Harold's name. They knew him as the mechanic, the quiet man who lived in a faded green tent behind the building, who never asked for anything, but who would fix your car for free if you were stuck. A stalled engine on a hot afternoon. A dead battery in the middle of a work trip. A single mother whose transmission gave out with 3 kids in the back seat. Harold showed up for all of them, tools in hand, asking for nothing in return. If someone insisted on paying him, he'd take a few dollars for food. If they didn't, that was fine too. The gas station owner, a man named Miguel, let Harold stay behind the building because Harold had once fixed Miguel's delivery truck in the middle of the night. No questions asked, no charge. He never wanted anything, Miguel would later say. He just wanted to be useful again. People in town had theories about Harold. Some thought he'd lost everything to addiction. Some thought he simply couldn't hold down a job. Nobody thought to ask him directly, and Harold never offered an explanation. He just kept fixing cars, one after another, for 6 straight years. Here's what nobody in that town knew. Before Harold enlisted, his grandfather had built a small manufacturing company from nothing, a business making specialized truck parts that, decades later, had grown into a company worth tens of millions of dollars. Harold's grandfather never had children of his own to leave it to except Harold's father, who had passed away when Harold was still overseas on his 2nd deployment. Harold had no idea any of this happened. Communication had broken down between him and his extended family years before he even enlisted. Old wounds, old arguments, the kind of estrangement that quietly hardens over time until nobody remembers exactly how it started. When his grandfather passed away 2 years after Harold came home, lawyers spent years trying to track Harold down as the last surviving heir. They had old addresses, most of them years out of date. They found dead ends, closed accounts, and a man who, by every official record, seemed to not want to be found. He wasn't hiding from the money. He simply had no idea it existed. It was a routine skip trace, the kind private investigators run for unclaimed estates, that finally connected Harold's old military records to the gas station on Route 9. A junior researcher at the law firm noticed a name match on a benefits document and passed it up the chain. 3 attorneys drove out from Dallas on a Tuesday morning. They found Harold exactly where Miguel said he'd be, underneath an old pickup truck, replacing a starter for a teenager who'd been stranded since sunrise. Harold didn't believe them at first. He thought it was a scam, or a joke, or a mistake with someone else's name. It took 2 full days, a stack of documents, and a phone call with a notary before it started to feel real. $11 million. An inheritance from a grandfather Harold hadn't spoken to in over 20 years, sitting untouched in a trust the entire time Harold slept behind a gas station in the Texas heat. Here's the part of Harold's story that surprised everyone, including the lawyers who found him. Harold didn't disappear into a new life. He didn't buy a mansion. He rented a modest 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from that same gas station. close enough to still walk to Miguel's on weekends. The first thing he did with the money wasn't for himself. He paid off Miguel's mortgage on the gas station without being asked. Then he set up a fund at the local high school for kids whose families couldn't afford car repairs, transportation to job interviews, or tools for auto shop class. The exact kind of help he used to give away for free, just formalized and multiplied. He opened a small nonprofit garage, staffed partly by veterans, offering free repairs to single parents, the elderly, and anyone who couldn't afford a shop rate. He named it simply Wrench's Garage, after the nickname his unit gave him decades earlier. When a local reporter asked him why he didn't simply enjoy the money quietly, Harold gave a short answer that the town still repeats today. I spent 6 years fixing what was broken because it was the only way I knew how to feel useful. Money doesn't change what made me useful. It just means more people get fixed. Harold still shows up at the gas station most Saturdays. Miguel says he still won't take payment for fixing your car. Even now, he just nods you toward the donation jar for the high school fund if you insist on giving something back. He finally reconnected with a cousin he hadn't spoken to in over a decade, someone who reached out after seeing the local news story, not asking for money, just asking how he'd been. Harold said that phone call meant more to him than the $11 million ever could. The tent behind the gas station is gone now, but the man who lived in it never really left. He just found a way to keep doing what he'd always done on a bigger scale, with a bank account that finally matched the size of his generosity. If this story moved you, remember, you never really know who's standing in front of you or what they've quietly carried. Subscribe to Quiet Heroes for more real stories about the people who give everything and expect nothing in return. See you in the next one.